Hi everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I, 28 male, just went through the wildest, most messed up ordeal of my entire life. 2 weeks ago, my ex-girlfriend basically tried to hijack my beach house, move her new boyfriend in, and demanded I sign the place over to her. It was like something out of a movie. Now that it's done, I'm still sitting here, a little shell-shocked, wondering how things escalated so fast. For some quick background, I'd always been obsessed with the ocean. My father used to take our family to a nearby beach for weekend hangouts, and we'd grill, fish with my uncle, and lounge around in the sand. Over the years, I got it in my head that I wanted to own a beach house someday. I started doing side jobs in carpentry and home repairs, saving up every extra cent. It took a while, but I finally found a small fixer-upper near the water. The place was old, but it had character, and I poured tons of sweat equity into turning it into a cozy home. My father, mother, brother, and sister-in-law helped at different stages, sometimes with painting, sometimes with bringing me food when I forgot to eat. By the time I finished, that beach house was the pride of my life. About 2 years ago, I started dating this woman who seemed amazing at first. She was funny, charming, and always had big ideas about starting her own business. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue, hit it off, and began spending loads of time together. She'd visit me at the beach house, claiming it was her little slice of paradise. My father and mother really liked her. My brother was neutral but polite, and my sister-in-law tried to warm up to her. At first, everything felt great. She said she liked how I lived a simple, hardworking lifestyle. I thought I'd found someone who genuinely clicked with me. But over time, strange stuff started happening. She'd get moody if I didn't immediately go along with her ideas for redecorating. She complained that my furniture was outdated or that the floors were too old-fashioned. I told her I liked the original wood and didn't want fancy tiles or marble. She'd act insulted, then cool off and pretend nothing happened. I started noticing she was also a bit secretive about certain phone calls, flipping her phone screen away if I walked into the room. If I asked what was up, she'd say it was personal or just a friend venting. After a while, she stayed over more often. I didn't think too much of it. It felt like a natural step. But my sister-in-law pulled me aside one day and warned me to be careful, saying something about how not everyone who seems great actually has your best interests at heart. I kind of brushed it off, thinking she was being overly cautious. Soon, my ex would occasionally hint about wanting a stake in the beach house. She'd say stuff like, "We should make this place ours," or "Isn't it time you put my name on something?" I was taken aback because she hadn't contributed anything to the mortgage or renovations, and we weren't married or even engaged. When I didn't jump at the idea, she'd get cold. Then she'd bounce back and act really sweet, talking about marriage or the future. It was confusing and stressful. My father asked if everything was okay because I looked more anxious lately, but I just shrugged it off and said relationships can be complicated. The real drama kicked off about 2 weeks ago. We had a huge argument about a party she wanted to throw at the beach house for a bunch of her friends, people I'd never met. She wanted a big loud bash that would probably cause trouble with my neighbors, and I told her we had local noise ordinances, so we had to be mindful. She snapped that I was controlling. She deserved to have fun. After that, she stormed out, stayed out until the early hours of the morning, came back smelling like alcohol, and started accusing me of holding her back. That led to a blowout fight, and she suddenly declared she wanted to break up. I was stunned but also sort of relieved because the relationship had gotten tense. She said she'd leave by the end of the week. We agreed to keep it civil for those remaining days. 2 days later, I got home from picking up some supplies with my father. I pulled into my driveway and saw a strange car out front. Inside, I found her with this new guy she introduced as her boyfriend. She flat out told me he'd be staying over, and I needed to deal with it. I nearly lost it. I told them both to get out. She refused, saying she had rights because she'd been living there and had contributed by cleaning and decorating. The new boyfriend piped in, talking like I should just accept it as if I owed them a place to stay. I demanded they leave, but she said, "I'm not leaving until you sign this house over to me." I earned it. She claimed she'd spent 2 years making it home, so now it was partially hers. I was completely floored. I said there was no way I'd sign anything over, and I wanted her gone. She threatened to call the police on me. In that moment, I remembered my father's advice. Never escalate in a way that can be used against you. I left, said I'd be back soon, and drove straight to my father and mother's place to tell them what's happening. They were livid. My father told me to see a lawyer ASAP and not to do anything physical. He said if she was threatening to call the police, I needed to protect myself legally. I contacted an attorney my uncle knew, someone with experience in property disputes and tenant issues. He listened to my story, then told me that without her name on a deed or a formal lease, she had no legal right to stay. However, he warned me that evicting anyone who's lived in a place can get tricky if they try to spin it as a landlord-tenant matter, so I needed to do everything by the book. He said we should draft a formal notice telling her to leave and, if needed, file an unlawful detainer to get a court order. The next day, I went back with a written notice in hand. I found a new boyfriend acting like he owned the place, moving my furniture around. She grabbed the paper out of my hand and ripped it up, shouting that I'd regret crossing her. I took a deep breath and left again. I called the police non-emergency line to ask for advice, and an officer said if she refused to leave, I could serve her with a formal eviction, but to keep everything calm and documented. If she threatened me physically, then I could escalate. That whole day was chaos. They locked themselves in my bedroom, blasted music, and ignored me. I just packed an overnight bag and slept at my brother's place. My mother called to check on me, worried they might break more of my stuff or cause bigger problems. My sister-in-law told me I should keep copies of any texts or calls threatening me. Sure enough, the next morning, my ex texted me this bizarre ultimatum: sign a house over or I'm never leaving. Her new boyfriend sent another message that said I should be smart and just do it. I forwarded all of that to my lawyer, who told me it was perfect evidence for the court. We immediately filed for an eviction, citing that she was an unauthorized occupant who wouldn't leave. Around that time, I tried to go back to check on the house. I discovered they had changed the locks. They literally kicked me out of my own place. I lost it and called the police, who showed up and asked them for proof that they had any ownership or tenancy. They couldn't provide a single document. My ex mumbled something about me, promising to put her name on the deed. The officer told them they were on thin ice but didn't force them out right then because we had already started the eviction process. He told me to keep working through the legal route to avoid any claims of harassment or illegal eviction. The days leading up to the court hearing were awful. They hosted people in my house, according to my neighbors, playing loud music and throwing mini parties. The neighbor across the street called me multiple times to complain about random cars in the driveway. I felt helpless, but my lawyer insisted we'd win this in court as long as I kept my cool. Finally, we got a hearing scheduled. I showed up with my deed, mortgage records, and all the texts they'd sent. My father came with me for support, along with my mother. My ex and her new boyfriend arrived and tried to act confident. She babbled about how she'd invested time and money in the house, like buying some decorations and helping me with minor stuff. The judge asked if she had any receipts or a written agreement showing partial ownership or that I'd promised her the deed. She had nothing. She got emotional, saying I'd let her on, and the new boyfriend insisted she was basically entitled to something. But it didn't fly. The judge ruled in my favor, stating there was zero evidence she owned any portion of the property. The eviction order was granted, and they had 48 hours to get out. The new boyfriend tried to protest that he wasn't served properly, but the judge said he was just a guest, so he had no standing. They looked furious when they left the courtroom. 2 days later, I arrived with a locksmith and a police officer to enforce the eviction. My ex and her boyfriend were still there, trying to stall. The officer told them that if they didn't leave, they'd be trespassing and could be arrested. They finally grabbed their bags and left, but not without throwing some insults my way. I was just relieved to see them go. Walking back into my house, I realized they had trashed the place. They left piles of garbage everywhere, broke a few items, and seemed to scuff up the walls on purpose. It was infuriating, but I was also just happy I could finally enter my own home. My brother and a couple friends came over that evening with cleaning supplies, ready to help me repair whatever damage they had done. We spent hours scrubbing and throwing out junk. My sister-in-law brought food, and we made a sort of group project out of restoring the place. Soon after that, my ex tried to file some small claims thing against me for emotional distress. My lawyer responded, pointing out there was no basis for it. The court tossed it out pretty quickly. I also heard from a mutual acquaintance that the new boyfriend ditched her once he realized she wasn't getting the house. It was the most bizarre, messed up chain of events, but it made sense that he wouldn't stick around once there was no payoff. I found out she'd apparently been seeing him for a few months before she moved him in. That explained why she'd been so distant and secretive. I felt stupid for not catching on sooner, but at least I escaped a worse situation. My father told me that sometimes you only see people's true colors when money or property is involved. He's got a point. I've spent the past week repairing the damage, both physical and emotional. My mother and father stopped by to lend a hand, and my sister-in-law has made sure I'm not wallowing too much. My brother is still mad that someone tried to pull this on me, but he's glad I handled it with legal paperwork instead of losing my temper. It was a big lesson in how important it is to protect yourself and your property. Now the beach house feels like it's mine again. I changed the locks, cleaned every corner, and got rid of anything that reminded me of her. I'm thinking about doing some more renovations, maybe repainting certain rooms or reinforcing the deck outside. Honestly, it helps me move forward. There's something satisfying about taking a place back after someone tried so hard to steal it from you. As for the ex, I have no clue where she ended up. I heard from one friend that she's couch surfing somewhere. A part of me feels bad for her, but then I remember how she treated me and what she tried to pull. I'm sure she'll be fine. She's resourceful when it comes to finding people to mooch off of. She blocked me on social media, which is totally fine by me. If there's a moral to this story, it's to trust your gut and be careful who you let into your life, especially your home. When she started pushing to be on the deed, I should have been on high alert. Instead, I just brushed it off, thinking it was normal relationship stuff. Turns out, it was a giant red flag. But hey, live and learn. I'm grateful my father and mother were there to give me good advice, and my lawyer made sure I got the legal win instead of losing my house in some twisted scenario. It's been a heck of a ride, and I hope none of you ever have to go through something like this. If you do, don't wait. Document everything, get a lawyer, and protect yourself. People can be shockingly bold when they think they can get their hands on your property or money. I'm just relieved I still have my beach house and can move on. The waves are still there, the sand is still warm, and I can finally enjoy it without fear of coming home to find squatters trying to take over again. I'm focusing on regaining my peace. My father and mother come over on weekends to barbecue. My brother jokes about setting up a security system just in case, and my sister-in-law keeps reminding me I dodged a bullet. I guess she was right all along about sensing something off. But I'm done beating myself up over not seeing it sooner. The important thing is that I took control before it was too late. Anyway, that's how my ex tried to claim my beach house and move in her new boyfriend right under my nose. I got them kicked out with legal action, and now things are finally back to normal. Or at least as normal as they can be after something like this. If anybody reading this is going through a similar situation, please remember that you do have rights as a property owner, and nobody can just waltz in and steal what you've worked so hard for. It might take some paperwork and time, but it's worth standing your ground. Stay safe out there, and trust me, never assume people won't try something outrageous just because it sounds impossible. I learned that lesson the hard way.